Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, host and head bookologist here at the Get Literate podcast. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. On this podcast, we explore the power of bookology and leading literate lives. We talk all things books and reading and notebooks and writing, mixed in with mindful practices and creativity to create lives we love. You can expect regular weekly episodes focused on 3 books you need to know about on a bookish theme and how to bring those themes to life in our actual lives too. You can also expect author interviews, notebooking inspiration, and topics to help us grow through what we go through and take inspired action to make our lives better. So grab a notebook and your TBR list and let's get literate. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Get Literate podcast. I'm Stephanie, your host, here with a conversation today about our reading lives. So if you're listening to this episode in real time, we are moving into the month of March of 2024. And for me, March has always been a long month. The weather here in upstate New York is always up and down. It's the month that's in between February break and April break of school vacations with no days off in between. And the newness of a new year, well, it's just wearing off. And now we're into March and things have settled in. So for me, March can feel kind of and sometimes our reading life can feel kind of too. In fact, I was recently talking online in my Get Literate Facebook group to a bunch of Get Literate members who were kind of commiserating and sharing ideas together. We were talking about reading and writing slumps. What are they? How do you get in them? Who's in them with us? And what do you do to get out of them? And I found we had a really great conversation, and there were some wonderful ideas shared for how to get out of a reading slump. So that's what this episode today is all about. What do you do when you find yourself in a reading slump? Well, first things first, I want you to ask yourself this question. Are you really in a reading slump? And I know you might think that might be odd, right? If you think you're in a reading slump, you're in a reading slump. But I want you to really ask yourself that question. Are you really in a reading slump? Is it something that you truly think about your personal reading life? Or are you in a slump because of what you see others doing in their reading lives? So a true slump is when you feel like your level of expectation around your reading life is falling short. But so often we end up feeling a certain way about our reading lives because of what other people are saying about theirs. So we might feel bad about the number of books that we've read this year compared to what other people are putting on social media. We might feel bad about the number of minutes that we're able to read because it isn't measuring up to what we see others talking about. Or maybe we're in a slump because we feel like we haven't read those books that are all the rage right now that everyone else seems to be reading. Do you see the difference? A true reading slump is where you don't feel good about your reading life for a particular reason. You want to read more books, but you haven't. You want to dedicate more time each day to read, but you haven't. You want to read different books. You want to get to them, but you just haven't picked them up for whatever reason. That is how I define a reading slump. A dip in your reading life that you truly feel upset about. Not the kind of reading slump that you feel slumpy because you are looking at what others are doing online. So if you think about that distinction, and then you truly can say, yes, Stephanie, I feel like I'm in a reading slump. I'm falling short of what I want my reading life to feel like. Well, then you are in a reading slump, and now we can talk about what to do about it. So, the second step after figuring out if you're actually in a reading slump or not is to ask yourself why. Now, I know, asking yourself why you're in a slump, we could have a bazillion reasons come up, but it's really important to just think about for a minute. Because what I have found in my own personal experience is that when I say I am in a reading slump, or I feel like I am in a reading slump, there are often two different categories that cause the slumpiness. So on one side, I feel like my reading slump is actually related to my reading life, right? I feel like I'm not reading the number of books I want to read, even though I have those books available. I feel like I'm not making time to read, even though I have that time available. I feel like the books I've read have been okay, but I'm not really hitting the mark on the books that I love and what I want to read next. I feel like my reading life is just a little bit meh. Now, on the other hand, slumps may be caused by something outside of your reading life, right? And so I find that sometimes my reading slumps are because of my life slumps. So I'm going through something really challenging and I just don't have the time to dedicate to my reading life. Or life just feels really hard and I don't have the mental energy or the mental capacity in order to read. Or maybe there's something physical going on, right? You're sick or your neck hurts. You don't want to hold that book. You just can't get comfortable, right? Those are real reasons that might cause a reading slump. Or maybe your job is just so demanding and there are so many things going on that not only do you not have the time, but you don't even want to read because your brain is just too overwhelmed. Right? So those are two different kinds of reasons. One is a reading slump directly related to your reading life that we can talk about today and have control over. But then the other is related to your actual life. And it may be harder to get over that reading slump without actually addressing the other things that are in your life. And so I want to be clear. If you are in a reading slump because life is hard and life is challenging, then I'm going to challenge you to think that you might not be in a reading slump. You're just going through a hard time. And it is absolutely okay to let your reading life go for a little bit. I promise you, it will be there later when you're feeling better, when life is calm. You know, I say that books are patient, they will wait for us, and that is true. So today, the kinds of reading slump I want to talk about are number one, the kind of reading slump that you actually feel you are in. And number two, the reading slumps that are actually related to your reading life, those that you can control with a couple of quick fixes, fun hacks, and some tried and true tips from some Get Literate community members. And so that's where we're heading next. If you're really in a slump and it's really a result of your reading life, well, then now it's time to take action. And that action should relate to your why, right? So I do want you to take a minute and think, why am I in this reading related slump that I truly believe is a reading related slump? Is it because I haven't made the time to read? Well, then there's certain suggestions for you to fix that up. Is it because I just haven't found a book that has gotten me excited for reading? Well, then there's a different set of suggestions for you, right? So I'm going to offer 10 different ideas to get you out of a reading slump. Some of these are coming from me, and most of them are coming from Get Literate community members. I crowdsourced for this episode, which makes this a really fun, special episode. So if you're not inside my Get Literate Facebook group, I highly recommend that you head there. We are a group of highly supportive, highly enthusiastic readers and writers who live real lives and just try to stay connected to our reading and writing lives and to each other and have a little bit of fun along the way. And so I am so grateful for their contributions. Number one, for Amy S., who posted about her reading slump and if we had any suggestions on what to do about it. And for all of the members I'm going to mention in this episode for contributing their wonderful ideas. Now, the first thing I want to start with is a comment from Amy W., who is an OG member of the Get Literate community. And I want to read what she wrote online because I feel like her response is the ultimate response when trying to get out of a reading slump. Actually, when trying to get out of any slump. And here's what Amy said. This is where I grant myself grace. Celebrate what I have accomplished and take small steps towards the reader/writer I want to become. Just take small steps. A mantra I like to embrace and remind myself is that momentum will always trump motivation, cheering you on. I love that phrase. Momentum will always trump motivation. And then another member jumped in with a similar kind of comment. This is Julie J. I find myself in the same situation with writing and exercising. Giving myself grace is important. I know it's temporary. I try to find small pockets of time to fit in even a bit of writing or whatever it is I'm trying to get back to. Amy and Julie have stumbled upon the magic rule, the magic wand of getting yourself out of a slump of anything, but especially for your reading life. And that magic rule of thumb is do something. Just do something. Don't sit there and admire the problem of your reading slump. Acknowledge that it's a slump you believe in and a slump related to your reading life that you can actually control, and then you can do something. There's another quote that I love, and I apologize because I don't remember where I heard it or who said it first. I want to say I heard it from Mel Robbins. And that quote is, action is the antidote to anxiety. Action is the antidote to anxiety. So if something is bothering you, if something has you down, if something is getting you anxious over a situation, just do something, anything. And I promise you, it will feel better than just sitting there doing nothing, thinking about the problem that you're in. So that is my overall advice to get out of a reading slump, which is just do something. And when I say do something, I imagine a something comes to mind, depending on who you are and what your reading life is like. Maybe instantly in your mind, you're like, yep, I could read for 5 minutes today. Or I'm just going to go to my shelf and close my eyes and pick the next book since I can't decide what to read. Or I'm going to ask someone else to do the dishes or fold the laundry so that I could read. In my house, it just means that gets done later. But anyway, that is a whole nother podcast episode. So in your mind, you're thinking, do something, right? Try that thing. That could be the very thing, the small little micro action that could put you on momentum to get out of your slump. And remember, momentum will always trump motivation. And action is the antidote to anxiety. I almost said it backwards. Okay, now I want to share 10 different ways to get you out of your reading slump. Most of them crowdsourced by Get Literate members, with a couple that I am saving for myself at the end. Okay, so one tip that actually is a wonderful suggestion that I hadn't even thought of, but I tend to do with my favorites, comes from Michelle O., which is reread your favorite book. When all else fails, if you know there is a book that you adore, that you love, that you would read again and again and again if you could, then do that. If you are in a slump and you don't know what to read, and you're not sure you can find the time to read, and you don't feel really good about reading, then go to a book that made you feel great. Sink yourself in that experience, remember what it felt like, immerse yourself in that book, and remind yourself why reading is such an important part of your life. So rereading a favorite book can be one of those actions to get you out of a reading slump. Another one comes from Dawn, another OG Get Literate member who's actually been on the podcast interviewing me, kind of flipping things around. And Dawn's suggestion is to go to a favorite author. I love this. We all have favorite authors that we adore for one reason or another. I adore anything written by Jenny Colgan, right? Anything with chocolate and cupcakes and beautiful kind of rom-coms, that is my jam. I also love any book that Terry M. Brown has ever written, and I've talked with her multiple times on the podcast, right? Who's your ride or die author, right? Who will you read and know that you will love? Is it Frederick Bachman because you love the Beartown series? Is it Viola Shipman, another one of my favorites, because you just love the stories that end up in your mind and you end up with a bucket list of going to Michigan, right? Who is your favorite author? Are you a mystery/suspense lover? Do you want to read everything written by Ruth Ware, right? Or do you want to go to your favorite murder series and pick one up? The choice is yours, but choosing a favorite author can sometimes almost guarantee getting you out of a reading slump because you know you love the author already and their style of writing and the way they invite you into their reading world. So rereading a favorite or heading to your favorite author can be a really good next move. Now, another idea, this one actually comes from me, is to start with a short book. Sometimes it can just feel really good to finish something. I am the kind of list maker who, when she makes her to-do list, if she added something to the list that wasn't there, she'll actually add it to the actual list just so that I can cross it off. I love that feeling of accomplishment, drawing the line through it or putting the check mark on it. I love the feeling of adding another book to my bookish spreadsheet or going on Goodreads and leaving a review. I love that feeling of accomplishment when I shut that last page and I close the cover of the book. And so if that is you, if you also enjoy that feeling could be something that gets you out of a reading slump. And so head online, Google best short books, or go to your bookcase and look at the books that are the thinnest, or head to the library, look at your holds, and just pick the smallest one. Getting through that book, getting to the end, closing it, feeling that sense of accomplishment, that could be exactly what you need. Now, I've got another fun idea here. This comes from Kate C. And Kate had this really cool idea, and I'm actually going to read the comment because I've never done this, and I definitely wanted to do this. So it says, some things that have worked at times in the past include putting a slip of paper for each most wanted read, those books on my shelf that I Next up is a recommendation from Amy C. And Amy's recommendation is to have a light read. So if you're in a reading slump, it likely is not the time to pick up The Covenant of Water. It's not the time to pick up a deep historical fiction or a lengthy personal development or nonfiction text. When you're trying to get out of a reading slump, you might pick something lighter, a collection of poetry, a light rom-com, right? Anything Emily Henry. So choosing from the books that you have available, a light read that you know won't take too much mental energy, but will be a delight to enjoy, could be a really great tip. Now, I also loved another suggestion that Amy C. provided in the group. It's one that always works for me, and that's to give yourself permission to indulge. And what that means is allow yourself to buy a book for yourself. I know that we can just head to the library and pick up our holds. We could download a free ebook on Libby. We might go to a free little library, and those are all wonderful ways to get books that are definitely easy on the purse strings. But when you're in a slump, sometimes just being nicer to yourself, being kind to yourself, giving a treat to yourself, and reading certainly is a healthy treat, well, that can be all you need to get out of that slump. So allow yourself to go to your local independent bookstore, browse the shelves, and indulge in a book that you have purchased for you. And I'm going to add that I think it should be a hardcover because there's just something about holding a hardcover and seeing what that cover looks like underneath the sleeve and seeing it stand out more on your bookshelf. It's just something that makes my reading heart happy. So give yourself permission to indulge and see if that helps get you out of your reading slump. Now, another idea comes from Michelle O, and Kate C. And both of them say that joining a book club or starting a buddy read with someone could get you out of a slump. A lot of times we feel like we're in a slump because we feel isolated. We feel alone. We don't feel connected to our reading life. And so boosting a connection can be the thing that can pull you out. So that could be a buddy read with one friend. It could be a book club with multiple friends, or even a book club with multiple strangers. Kate mentioned our silent book club that we did inside of our Get Literate community. It was this fun virtual event where all we did was literally read. We joined the Zoom, we said hello, we put the title we were reading in the comments, and then we read for 45 minutes. Most of us had screens on, some of us had screens off, but it was just time on our calendar for us to put us together with like-minded people. And as Kate said, I joined the party and I got a solid start on a book that got me moving again. Action is the antidote to a slump. So you could find a friend, you could phone a friend, you could find a book club, you could head on to Get Literate. That is a community that is waiting there for you too. But reaching out to another person for a bookish connection can get you out of a slump. Now, Kate also had another idea that I just have to read word for word because I've never done this, but now I want to do it. And it's a book jar, I guess. I'm just going to name it. It's a book jar. And it says you put a slip of paper for each most wanted read, right? Most want to read books, the books on your shelf that you've been wanting to read for a while, or maybe it's an author on that slip of paper. So then you can choose a title from their body of work. And you put those slips into the jar. When you're in a slump, when you don't know what to read next, you just need to get going, just pull a slip out of the jar. Right? You're guaranteed to get a title that you really want to read or an author that you really want to read, and you avoid decision paralysis. Figuring out what to read next can make us delay what we read next, which can then put us squarely into a reading slump. So having a fun jar with colorful slips of paper and titles and authors you want to read on it can just be a really fun, whimsical way to figure out what you want to read next. Now, I also have a couple more suggestions here. And this one comes from Karen and Amy, and that is find the right book. A lot of us said that the one thing that got us out of a reading slump was reading that perfect book, the one that reminded us how good reading could be, that hooked us into the plot, into the story, into the characters, into the nonfiction. Finding that right book did it. Now, that can be kind of hard to do, though. When you're in a reading slump and you're feeling about your reading life, finding the right book takes energy. And that may be energy that isn't well spent because you never know if it's the right book until you actually spend time reading it. So thinking about finding the right book, you need to just ask. Ask someone, ask a friend a book that they loved that they think would be perfect for you. Go to a bookseller and tell them about what you love and see what they recommend. Do the same for your librarian. Head to your favorite Facebook group, Get Literate for sure, and put out a question of here's what I like to read. What do you think a book could be to get me out of my reading slump? Now, I'm not sure if you know this, but if you go on my website, alitlife.com, and you click at the top, free bookish goodies, and you scroll, you will find a free postcard service that I have. This started in December when I did 25 days of books, and I didn't want to let it go. So if you go there, you can click on a link and it'll take you to a Google form. And on that Google form, you put your name, your physical address, your email, and a few little things about your reading life and the book that you might want next. I look at that information on the form and I pick one book that I think would be perfect for you. I write about that book on my brand new special book recommendation postcards, and then I pop it into the mail so that you actually get a book recommendation that I hope is perfect for you in your snail mail. You can then indulge and buy the book or find it in your library holds or download it online. Either way, that may be a fun way to get you out of a slump. So alitlife.com, click free bookish goodies, and then find the form, and I am happy to send a single book recommendation in the mail to you. If you want more than one, if you want a whole apothecary of recommendations personalized to you, I do create book apothecaries for others too. That involves a little bit more in-depth Google form so that I can get some extra information. And then I come back with a list of anywhere between 7 and 10 books that I think are perfect for you in this season of life. Give you the title, the author, the cover photo so that you can see it, not judge it, but see it, and a little bit about why I think you would love that book. And you can even go bigger and we can hop on a Zoom call to talk about your reading life and the books you'd like to. Those book apothecaries are some of my most favorite things to create. So if that sounds like something that you'd love as a way to indulge yourself and give yourself a little bookish treat, you can find that online at alitlife.com too. Now, next up are a couple of last ideas that are coming from me. So one surefire way to get me out of a reading rut is to read children's literature. You know I love children's literature. You know I think all adults should read children's literature. And so one recommendation to get out of a reading slump is to pick up a middle grade novel. Why? Well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, they are shorter than adult books. So you're going to get through one quickly and get that sense of accomplishment. Number two, they are often lighter reads than the adult fiction books we could get. That doesn't mean they are any less powerful. In fact, sometimes I think they are more, but it does have a lighter quality to it, a childlike quality, if you will. And so having a quick read, having a lighter read, and then reading to your inner child, right? When you're in a slump and you don't feel good, you just want to feel better. And a middle grade fiction book can be the exact soothing that you might need. You can go online to Lit Life and you can find some of my favorite middle grade selections, or you can head on over to my other podcast. It's called Kid Lit Love. And every week I have a different conversation with a new children's literature author. Authors like Anne Braden, James Preller, Janet Costa Bates, even Mr. Shu is coming up talking about his picture books and his new middle grade novel in verse. So reading a middle grade book can be a surefire ticket out of a reading slump. But I have one more idea, and this one is the most creative idea I have for getting out of a reading slump, and it's this: celebrate a lesser known holiday with books. Now, a lot of us are holiday readers. Around the holiday season, we will read spookier mystery books around Halloween and the fall. We might read light holiday reads around the Christmas and holiday season. But what about holidays like Do a Grouch a Favor Day and read a book about revenge? What about National Split Pea Soup Week and read a book that has food in it? Or what about National Bubble Wrap Appreciation Day, so that you can read something whimsical. Lesser known holidays celebrate particular days, weeks, even months of the year, and they offer a fun, whimsical opportunity to get out of a reading slump by just celebrating a holiday with a book. So I want to end this episode by telling you about 12 lesser known holidays to match every single month of the year and 2 book recommendations for each. So no matter when you are listening to this episode, no matter what month it is, when you feel like you're in a reading slump and you want to get out, you've got 2 books that might be a fun treat and something completely different for your reading life. So here we go. January is bread machine baking month. Did you know that? Bread machine baking month. And so in January, you might read Jenny Colgan's Little Beach Street Bakery, or you might read Ellie Alexander's Caught Bread-Handed. I love the play on words there. Now, February is National Wedding Month. And so you might read Jojo Moyes' The Ship of Brides, or Dorothy West's The Wedding. March is National Crafting Month. And if you haven't read Love Lettering by Kate Claiborne, I definitely think you do. And you might also read City of Girls, quite different than the first book by Elizabeth Gilbert. April is National Multiple Birth Awareness Month. I have twins, so I knew this. You might read Mary Higgins Clark's Two Little Girls in Blue, or you could read another favorite author of mine, Leanne Moriarty, and read her book called 3 Wishes. May is National Pet Month. I know we have a lot of pet lovers out there. You could listen to The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arakawa, or you could read 99 Nights in Logar by Jamil Jan Kachai. Maybe you're listening to those books as you walk your pet that month. Now, June is fun. June is National Candy Month. And so I am giving you one of my all-time favorite book recommendations, The Loveliest Chocolate Shop in Paris by Jenny Colgan. Or if you want a different genre related to the chocolate world, Dying for Chocolate by Diane Mott Davidson. And the best part would be, of course, to eat some chocolate while reading it. Now, July is National Picnic Month to kick off the summer season. So you might read Picnic in Provence, a memoir with recipes, or Lunch in Paris, a love story with recipes by Elizabeth Bard. Both of those books actually are by Elizabeth Bard. August is Happiness Happens Month. So that month you might read The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin, one of my favorites, or another one at the top of my list, 30 Things I Love About Myself by Radhika Sangani. September is World Candle Month. So maybe you read a book with a candle on the cover, like this book. It's all relative. 2 families, 3 dogs, 34 holidays, and 50 boxes of wine by Wade Rouse, aka Viola Shipman. Or you might read a cozy candle mystery like Vanilla Bean Vengeance by Agatha Frost. October is National Go on a Field Trip Month. And what better way to go on a field trip than going to the destination of your dreams through a book? You might try Sarah Ackerman's book titled Island of Sweet Pies and Soldiers. That's set in Hawaii. Or maybe you whisk yourself off to Italy and you read Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welch. Now, November is a fun one. November is No Shave November. And so you might read a book whose main character has some facial hair. You can try a book titled Beauty and the Beard, a mountain man romance by K.C. Crown, or you can read Ready to Fall by Daisy Prescott. Now, our last month of the year, I know it is typically associated with holidays, but did you know that December is National Tie Month? And so you could read a book with the word tie in the title. Danielle Steele's Family Ties comes to mind, or maybe you read Ties, literally just one word title Ties by Domenico Starnone, translated by Jahumpa Lahari. I mean, how much more fun can you get with those titles? So that is just a fun, whimsical way to knock you out of a reading slump by giving you a book recommendation to celebrate a lesser-known holiday. Not only is it fun, but then you can share these lesser-known holidays with those around you, and that could be even more fun to pay it forward. So there you have it, 10 ways to get yourself out of a reading slump, some of them from me, and most of them from the amazing community inside my Get Literate Facebook group. Now you know what I'm going to ask you next. What is your favorite way to get out of a reading slump? You can find me in all sorts of ways to let me know your suggestions online. I am at alitlife.com, and you can click on the show notes and leave a comment. You might head to your favorite social platform and find me at Affinito Lit, or maybe you click that little audio message button inside your podcast platform and just leave me a quick message right now of what your recommendation is. And I'd love if I can ask you a favor. If you know of a friend, a fellow reader, a bookish acquaintance that has been in a reading slump or is in a reading slump or might be in a reading slump in the future, I would love if you could take a screenshot of this episode on your device and text them. Just text a friend that this might be an episode that they love. And if you want to go a step further, go ahead and put that screenshot on your stories or in your social media profile and tag me. I would love to know that you found this episode helpful and share it with as many readers as we can. Because unless we're reading, we can't get those wonderful physical, cognitive, and emotional benefits that come from it. And so the less reading slumps we know of, the better. So thanks so much for listening to this fun episode of the Get Literate podcast to get out of your reading slump. I can't wait to hear your ideas. And in the meantime, happy reading. Get out of that slump, get into a wonderful new book, and be sure to let me know your suggestions so that I can do the same. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. Plus, if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing life, like bonus podcast episodes, bibliotherapy book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much, much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all of the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. And one more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks for listening.